Please, just make it quick, she said. But something in her eyes stopped him. The first time Kellen Rourke saw the woman, she was standing under a broken neon sign that kept flickering the word dock, like it could not decide if it still mattered. The outpost was called Sable Crossing, a rough little settlement on the edge of the planet Vesta. It was not much more than a ring of metal shacks, fuel tanks, and old ship containers stacked into crooked streets. Dust rolled through like smoke. 2 suns hung low and made the air look tired. Kellen rode in on a lean biomech horse, half steel and half muscle. Its hooves tapped the packed sand with a steady, patient rhythm. People watched him from doorways and shadows. They always did. His coat was long, his hat brim low, and his belt carried a stun rifle and a plasma revolver. A bounty hunter did not need a loud entrance. The name did the work. He did not look at the saloon. He did not look at the market stalls. He went straight to the docking yards, where ships came and went like nervous birds. The bounty notice on his wrist screen showed a face and a name. Lyra Vale, wanted for sabotage. Dangerous. Armed. Reward. 30,000 credits. 30,000 was enough to fix his ship's cracked coolant line and buy supplies for months. It was enough to keep him moving, which was what he had been doing for years. Moving kept trouble from catching up. He stepped off the horse and tied the reins to a bent rail. The docking yard smelled like hot metal and old fuel. Cables hung like vines. A cargo crane creaked in the wind. Somewhere, a generator hummed like an angry insect. Kellen followed the beacon signal from the bounty tag. Whoever issued the contract had done the work. The tag was active and close. He found the woman in a wide bay where the roof had partly collapsed. Light slanted through gaps in the metal, cutting the space into bright strips and dark pools. A few broken crates lay like bones. She was not hiding. She was waiting. Kellen stopped in the doorway. She turned her head slowly. Her hair was dark and tied back, but strands had come loose and clung to her forehead from sweat. Her clothes were plain, dust-stained, and too light for the cold night that would come. She looked tired in the way a person looks after too many days without safe sleep. Her eyes were the strange part. They were steady. Not wild. Not panicked. Just steady, like she had already faced every ending and chosen one. Kellen lifted his stun rifle. The red aiming dot landed on her chest. She did not flinch. Lyra Vale, he said. She gave a small nod. That's what they call me now? Kellen did not like the way she said it, like the name was something someone had placed on her instead of something she owned. He kept his voice flat. You know why I'm here. She swallowed, then exhaled like she had been holding air for a long time. Please, she said. Her voice was soft, almost calm. Just make it quick. Most people begged. They cried.
They tried to run. They tried to bargain.
They lied. They promised things. She asked for speed like she was asking him to close a door. Kellen's finger tightened on the trigger. He had done this before. He told himself it was simple. A job was a job. If she was guilty, this was justice. If she was not, that was not his problem. The contract was his shield. But her eyes stopped him. Not because they were pretty. Not because they were dramatic. Because there was something behind them that did not match the bounty notice. It was not fear. It was not anger. It was a deep tiredness, and beneath it a spark of relief, like she thought he might finally end something that had been dragging her through pain. Kellen lowered the rifle an inch without meaning to.
You're not running,
he said. No, Lyra answered. I'm done running. Listening, the outpost outside was loud in its usual way. Voices, engines, music. But inside the bay it felt like the air had stopped. Empty. No hidden movement. You armed? He asked. Lyra shook her head. Not anymore. A second later, the sound of boots crashed against metal outside. Jason's head snapped toward the doorway. His biomech horse let out a low warning sound through its throat speaker. Lyra's face changed, not with surprise, but with a kind of bitter acceptance. They found us, she whispered. Kellen stepped back into the shadow of the doorway and peeked out. 3 men in armored jackets moved fast across the docking yard. Their helmets were open, but their eyes were hard. They were not local. Their gear was too clean, their rifles too new. Behind them, a 4th figure followed. A tall man in a long coat with a corporate badge shining on his chest. Kellen recognized the badge. Vantis Corp, one of the mining corporations that owned half the planet's water rights. This was not normal for a simple bounty. Kellen turned and kept his voice low. Who are those people? Not your competition. They're the reason I said quick. The first soldier spotted Kellen's horse and pointed. There. Kellen cursed under his breath. He did not like being tracked. He liked being the tracker. The soldiers ran toward the bay. Kellen had a choice, and he made it in the way he always did when the world pushed too close. He grabbed Lyra's arm. Move, he said. She stumbled, then caught herself. Her arm was thin under his hand, but she did not fight him. She moved like she had been waiting for someone to pull her out of a trap. Kellen led her deeper into the bay, toward a back wall covered in hanging tarp. Behind the tarp was a narrow service passage, just wide enough for two people if they squeezed. He pushed the tarp aside and pulled her in. The passage smelled of dust and old oil. Outside, the first soldier entered the bay. Lyra Vale, the soldier shouted. Come out, and this stays clean. Kellen held Lyra still, one hand over her mouth gently, not to hurt her, just to keep her quiet. Her eyes turned to his, and he saw it again. Relief mixed with something else. Hope, maybe. Or trust. He did not know why she would trust him, but the look was there. The soldier's boots scraped across the bay floor. Light swept past as a flashlight beam searched. Kellen's heart stayed steady. He had lived through worse. Then the corporate man's voice echoed in, calm and sharp. She's not leaving this outpost alive. Understood? The soldiers answered, yes, sir. Kellen's jaw tightened. That was not a normal arrest order. That was a kill order. Lyra's eyes closed for a moment. When she opened them, there were tears, but she kept them inside, refusing to let them fall. You hear that? He whispered. Lyra nodded. That's why I wanted it quick. At least if you did it, it would be over fast. You think I'd kill you because some screen told me to? Her voice shook, just a little. I think people do what they have to do. I don't blame you. That answer bothered him even more than fear would have. The soldiers moved closer. Their boots were now only a few steps away from the tarp. Kellen made another decision. He leaned toward Lyra. If I get you out of here, you tell me the truth. All of it. I will. Kellen clicked his wrist screen and sent a silent command to his horse. The biomech animal responded with a soft chime. Outside, the horse suddenly kicked the rail, making a loud clang. It then bolted down the lane like a frightened animal. The soldiers shouted, It's running! Two of them sprinted after the horse's sound, thinking it was the fugitive fleeing. The remaining soldier stayed in the bay, moving toward the tarp with his rifle up. Kellen waited until the soldier was close enough. He stepped out, fast and quiet, and slammed the butt of his stun rifle into the soldier's shoulder. The soldier grunted and swung his weapon up, but Kellen fired first. A blue stun pulse hit the soldier's chest. The soldier froze, muscles locking, then collapsed in a stiff fall. Kellen caught the rifle before it hit the ground, grabbed the soldier's wristband, and snapped it off. He tossed it to Lyra. Put that on, he said. It'll fool their scanners for a few minutes. Kellen pulled her out of the passage. We're leaving. Now. They ran through a side exit that led into a corridor between stacked containers. The corridor opened into the market street, crowded with people, loud music, and shouting merchants. For a moment they blended in. Kellen kept his hat low. Lyra kept her head down. The second sun dipped lower, and the streetlights came on, casting orange halos through the dust. Kellen aimed for the edge of town, toward the old canyon path where ground vehicles could not follow easily. But before they reached it, the corporate man appeared ahead, stepping out from behind a fuel truck like he had been waiting there the whole time. He was not alone. Two more soldiers flanked him, rifles pointed. His voice was calm, like this was business. Kellen Rourke, he said. You're making a mistake. The corporate man smiled without warmth. Hand her over. You'll still get paid, maybe more. Lyra's hand clutched the stolen wristband. Her shoulders trembled. Kellen felt the weight of the old habit in his chest. Take the money. Walk away. Don't make problems. But he looked back at Lyra's eyes. Something in them said she had been hunted like this for a long time. Something in them said she had stopped believing anyone could choose right. Kellen's voice came out rough. What did she do? The corporate man's smile thinned. She stole property. She's a person, Kellen said. The corporate man's eyes turned colder. Not in our contract. The street noise seemed to fade. Even the wind felt like it was holding its breath. Lyra whispered behind him, almost too quiet to hear, Please don't die for me. Kellen did not answer. He stared at the man with the badge, and for the first time in years, Kellen Rourke did not feel like a man doing the job. He felt like a man standing at a crossroads. The corporate man lifted his hands slightly, and the soldiers raised their rifles. Kellen knew what came next. He stepped forward one small step, placing himself fully between Lyra and the guns. Then he said, "You're going to have to go through me." And the outpost, the Dust, and the Twin Suns watched as the first shot was about to be fired. He grabbed Lyra's wrist and pulled her sideways into a narrow alley between two cargo containers. A bright stun blast flashed behind them, striking the metal wall and sending sparks into the air. The crowd in the market scattered instantly, shouting and running in all directions. Dust rose like smoke. "Run," Kellen said quietly but firmly. Lyra did not argue. She followed him, her breath sharp and uneven as they pushed through the back streets of Sable Crossing. The outpost was a maze of stacked crates, fuel pipes, and old ship parts welded together. Only someone who had traveled through places like this many times could move so quickly without hesitation. Another shot hit the ground near them, sending sand spraying across their boots. "They're not trying to stun us anymore," Lyra said, her voice tight. The shots were heavier now, louder. Real weapons. He turned sharply and fired his own stun rifle behind him. The pulse struck one of the pursuing soldiers, knocking him off balance long enough for Kellen and Lyra to disappear around another corner. They reached the edge of the settlement where the metal structures ended and open desert began. The twin suns dipped low, painting the sky with deep orange and purple colors. A sharp whistle cut through the air. Moments later, Kellen's biomech horse appeared, running fast through the dust. Its metal legs moved smoothly, its glowing eyes scanning for threats. The command he sent earlier had guided it back to him. He swung onto the saddle and pulled Lyra up behind him. "Hold tight," he said. She wrapped her arms around his waist without hesitation. The horse launched forward, its hooves kicking up sand as it sped toward the canyon path. Behind them, engines roared. Two hoverbikes lifted into the air, chasing them. Kellen leaned low, guiding the horse through narrow rocks and steep slopes where the bikes would struggle. He knew the terrain better than anyone chasing him. He had chosen this path years ago for exactly this reason. The wind whipped against them as they raced deeper into the desert. Lyra pressed her forehead against his back. "Why are you helping me?" she asked over the rushing air. Kellen did not answer right away. He focused on navigating a sharp turn, jumping over a broken ridge where loose stones rolled under the horse's hooves. "I haven't decided yet," he said finally. It was not the full truth, but it was enough. They rode for nearly an hour before the sound of engines faded behind them. The canyon walls grew taller, blocking the wind and hiding them from scanners. When the sky turned dark and the stars appeared, Kellen slowed the horse. He stopped near a cluster of tall rocks that formed a natural shelter. A small stream trickled nearby, rare water in a dry world. They dismounted sightlessly, her legs shaky from the long ride. She leaned against a rock, closing her eyes for a moment. Kellen checked the horizon, listening carefully. Only silence answered. He built a small fire using a portable heat unit, keeping the light low so it would not attract attention. After a few minutes, he handed her a canteen. She drank carefully, then looked at him. "You said you wanted the truth." "Yes," Kellen replied. Lyra sat down across from him. The firelight made shadows move across her face, showing lines of exhaustion he had not noticed before. "I'm not a saboteur," she began quietly. "I was part of a research team studying ancient alien ruins under this planet's surface." Kellen raised an eyebrow. "Alien ruins?"
Vesta 9 wasn't always a desert.
"Long ago, something changed its environment. My team believed the ruins held technology that could control planetary climate." He watched her carefully. People lied in many ways, but her voice carried no exaggeration, only tired honesty. "What happened?" he asked. "We found it," she said. "A device buried deep underground. It was real. It could restore ecosystems, bring life back to dead worlds." She hesitated. "Or destroy them." Kellen leaned back slightly, considering her words. "Vantis Corps found out," she continued. "They didn't want restoration. They wanted control. If they owned the only device that could change planets, they would control entire systems. And you stopped them, he guessed? "I tried to hide the discovery," she said. "I sent evidence to independent colonies. After that, everything fell apart. My team disappeared. The company accused me of sabotage and issued the bounty." The fire crackled softly between them. Kellen thought about the corporate man's words earlier. "She's not leaving this outpost alive." That sounded less like justice and more like cleaning up a problem. "You could be lying," he said calmly. "I know," Lyra replied, "but if I wanted to escape, I would not have waited for you in that docking bay." Why didn't you fight? He asked. She stared into the fire. Because I was tired of running, and because if someone like you finished it, at least I would not be used as an example. Kellen did not like how that sounded. It felt too heavy, too close to something he did not want to think about. Silence stretched between them. Finally, he spoke again. Where is this device? Hidden in the canyon beyond this one. My team sealed the entrance. Only someone who knows the pattern can open it. And the company? They will come, she said softly. They always do. Kellen stared at the flames. He had spent years avoiding fights that were bigger than him. Big fights brought big enemies. Big enemies meant short lives. But something about this situation felt different. He noticed how she watched him, waiting for his decision without pushing him. Get some rest, he said after a while. We move at dawn. Kellen, she said. He looked at her. Back there, when they offered you money, she began carefully, you could have taken it. I still could, he replied. She gave a small, sad smile. Yes, you could. He looked away, uncomfortable with the way she said it. Not accusing, not pleading, just accepting. She finally lay down near the fire, wrapping herself in a thin blanket. Kellen stayed awake, watching the canyon entrance and listening to the night. Hours passed. At one point, Lyra shifted in her sleep, murmuring something he could not understand. He wondered how long she had been alone before this. When morning came, the sky turned pale blue, and a cold wind moved through the canyon. Lyra woke slowly, looking disoriented for a moment before remembering where she was. Ready? He asked. She nodded. They packed quickly and mounted the horse again, heading deeper into the canyon. The walls grew steeper, and strange rock formations rose like broken towers. As they rode, Lyra pointed ahead. There, she said, that ridge hides the entrance. He could already see signs of movement, small flashes of light reflecting off metal. He stopped the horse. Lyra's face fell slightly. They found it already. The soldiers moved along the top, scanning the area. They're ahead of us, he said. Lyra's shoulders lowered, as if the last hope she carried was slipping away. But Kellen's eyes hardened. Not finished yet, he said. She looked at him, surprised by the quiet determination in his voice. For the first time since they met, he did not look like a man unsure of his path. He looked like someone ready to choose a side. And as the wind carried the sound of distant machines, Kellen guided the horse toward a hidden path along the canyon wall, planning how to reach the ruins before the company could take everything. The canyon grew quieter as Kellen guided the biomech horse along a narrow hidden path carved into the rock wall. Below them, the main route curved toward the ridge where the corporate soldiers had gathered. From this higher path, they could see the small camp set up near a dark opening in the cliff face. Metal tents reflected sunlight. 2 scanning drones floated slowly in the air. Armed guards walked in steady patterns, their boots kicking dust into the wind. Lyra leaned forward slightly. That's the entrance, she whispered. Behind those rocks. Kellen stopped the horse and watched for a long moment. He counted movements, watched patrol patterns, and studied the way the guards reacted to each other. Experience taught him that rushing meant failure. They're expecting trouble, he said quietly. They're expecting me, Lyra replied. Kellen glanced back at her. Her face looked calmer now, but tension still showed in the way she held herself. This place mattered to her more than survival. He slid off the saddle and crouched behind a jagged rock. We don't go straight in, he said. We create distraction first. I know another way inside, a secondary access tunnel, but it's narrow. That's good, Kellen said. Narrow means fewer guns. They tied the horse in a hidden spot behind rocks. The biomech animal lowered its head and entered a low-power mode, blending into the shadows. Kellen checked his weapons. Only a few stun rounds remained. The rest were standard plasma shots. He preferred non-lethal options when possible, but today felt different. Lyra led the way along the cliff wall. The path sloped downward through loose stones and narrow gaps. After several minutes, they reached a crack in the rock, barely wide enough for a person to pass through sideways. This is it, she said. Inside, the air felt cooler. The tunnel twisted downward, walls smooth as if shaped by ancient machines instead of nature. Dim glowing lines ran along the stone, pulsing faintly with soft blue light. Kellen paused. That's not natural. No, Lyra said quietly. The ruins are older than any colony records. The technology still has power, even after all this time. They moved deeper, their footsteps echoing softly. The tunnel opened into a wide chamber and Kellen stopped. Before them stood an enormous structure rising from the ground like a metallic tree. Rings of energy rotated slowly around its center, humming with quiet power. Strange symbols moved across its surface, shifting like living language. Lyra walked forward slowly, eyes wide with emotion. "We found it here," she said softly. "The core device." The chamber felt peaceful, but he did not trust silence. "What does it do?" he asked. "It can change atmosphere patterns," she explained. "Adjust temperature, restore water cycles, heal damaged ecosystems. If used carefully, it could make this desert world live again." "And if not used carefully?" he asked. She hesitated. "It could cause storms strong enough to erase cities." Power always came with risk. Suddenly, a loud metallic sound echoed from the tunnel behind them. Kellen turned instantly, raising his rifle. Footsteps approached. Heavy ones. The corporate commander stepped into the chamber, followed by 4 soldiers. "I knew you would come here," the man said calmly. Lyra's face hardened. "You should leave. This does not belong to you." The commander smiled faintly. "Everything belongs to those strong enough to claim it." The commander noticed and laughed softly. "Ah, the famous Kellen Rourke. I wondered when you would pick a side." "I haven't," Kellen said. "Of course you have," the man replied. "You brought her here." One of the soldiers moved closer, scanning the device with a handheld unit. "Incredible," the commander said, watching the glowing structure. "With this, we can reshape entire markets, entire planets." Lyra stepped forward. "You'll destroy everything if you use it like that." "Progress always breaks something," he answered calmly. He turned toward Kellen. "Last chance, hand her over. You walk away richer than ever." A life of constant running could end. He could buy a ship, settle somewhere quiet, but then he remembered Lyra standing in that docking bay, asking him to make it quick because she believed no one would help her. He lowered his rifle slightly, then shifted it toward the soldiers instead.
"No deal," he said.
The commander's smile vanished. "So be it." The soldiers raised their weapons. The chamber exploded into motion. Kellen fired first, sending a stun blast into the nearest soldier. Lyra ducked behind a rock pillar as plasma shots struck the ground around them, sending sparks into the air. Kellen moved quickly, using the ruins as cover. He fired again, knocking another soldier off balance. The glowing rings of the alien device reflected flashes of light, making it harder to see clearly. Lyra crawled toward a console near the base of the structure. "What are you doing?" Kellen shouted. "Locking the system," she called back. "If they access it, they can override everything." The commander aimed directly at her. Kellen stepped out from cover and fired a precise shot that forced the man to move back. The fight continued, echoing through the chamber. One soldier charged forward, but Kellen used the environment, kicking loose stones that caused the man to slip before stunning him. Finally, only the commander remained standing. He backed away slowly, eyes cold. "This isn't over," he said. "You cannot protect this forever." He triggered a device on his wrist. A loud explosion shook the tunnel entrance behind him, collapsing part of the passage and filling the air with dust. Then he retreated into another corridor, disappearing. Silence returned slowly. Kellen lowered his rifle, breathing heavily. Lyra finished working at the console. The glowing lines on the device shifted color, stabilizing into a soft, steady light. "It's locked," she said quietly. Kellen nodded, but kept watching the tunnels. "He'll come back." "Yes," she agreed. "But now, we have time." She turned toward the massive structure, placing a hand gently against it. The rings of energy rotated slower, almost as if responding to her presence. Kellen watched her carefully. For the first time since he met her, she looked hopeful instead of tired. "What now?" he asked. "Now," she said, "we decide whether this world becomes a weapon or a home." Kellen glanced at the glowing device, then at the canyon beyond. He had crossed a line when he chose to stand against the company. There was no going back now, and deep inside he realized he did not want to go back. He wanted to see what happened next. The canyon was quiet after the battle, but Kellen knew it was only temporary. He and Lyra had stabilized the alien device, but that did not mean the danger was gone. The Vantis Corps commander would return, and this time he would bring everything he had. Kellen surveyed the chamber one last time. The glowing rings of the device rotated slowly, casting soft blue light across the walls. Lyra stood beside it, her hand resting lightly on the console she had locked. Her dark hair framed her face, and for the first time she did not look tired or afraid. She looked determined. "They're going to come back," Kellen said, voice low. Lyra nodded. "Yes. But we have options now. We can defend the canyon till help arrives." "Help?" Kellen asked. The settlers, she said. Independent groups who've been tracking Vantiscore for months. They've been waiting for a chance to stop them. They trust me, and now they'll trust you too. Kellen studied her carefully. Trust was rare in this life. But he had already chosen sides. She had shown him the truth, and he could not turn away. He led her out of the chamber and into a hidden corridor that wound back toward the canyon floor. The light outside was dim. The suns had dipped, leaving only shadows. The canyon wind whistled through the rocks, carrying the faint scent of dust and scorched metal. As they reached the exit, they saw the first signs of reinforcements. Small hovercrafts appeared at the canyon rim, their engines humming quietly. Settlers in rugged clothing and light armor were moving down the paths with careful precision. They carried improvised weapons, plasma rifles, stun guns, even old-fashioned pistols, but their eyes were sharp and confident. Lyra stepped forward. They trust us, she said again, because they know what this technology can do. They know what Vantiscore would do with it. Then let's make sure they get it safely. The first of Vantiscore's forces appeared just as the settlers reached the canyon. A dozen hoverbikes roared over the ridge, weapons glowing, scanning for targets. The commander himself was among them, his coat flapping in the wind, his eyes fixed on the device below. Kellen raised his rifle, checking the aim, but he did not fire immediately. He needed a plan. Chaos in the wrong place could destroy the alien device. Lyra grabbed his arm. We can't wait. If they get any closer, the canyon will become a battlefield, and this device could be destroyed. He looked at her. Her calm determination had grown into a kind of quiet bravery he had rarely seen. She was not just surviving anymore, she was leading. All right, he said. We go now. Stick to my lead. They moved to the edge of the canyon floor, taking cover behind jagged rocks. Kellen signaled to the settlers, who fanned out to cover the paths leading to the device. Some took elevated positions, others prepared to intercept the advancing corporate soldiers. The first hoverbike swooped down, scanning for targets. A settler fired a precise shot, hitting its sensors. Sparks flew, and the bike wobbled before crashing into the canyon floor. Kellen fired a few well-aimed pulses, disabling another bike. Lyra moved quickly to the device, checking its systems. The glowing rings had stabilized, but she monitored every pulse, every hum. The commander shouted from above, issuing orders. His soldiers opened fire, but the settlers had taken cover and returned accurate shots. The canyon echoed with the clash of energy weapons and the roar of engines. Kellen moved forward, using rocks and shadows to get closer to the commander. He could see the man's face now, filled with fury. You cannot stop me, the commander shouted. This device belongs to those who take it. He fired, sending a stun pulse that struck the commander's wrist device. Sparks flew, and the man stumbled back. A settler surged forward, tackling him to the ground. Lyra's voice called out, It's secure. We've locked the controls completely. The commander struggled, but the settlers held him down. He looked at Kellen, rage burning in his eyes. This isn't over, he spat. You will regret this. Kellen did not answer. He kept his eyes on the horizon, watching the last of the hoverbikes retreat. The canyon was quiet again, filled only with the steady hum of the alien device and the settlers moving to secure the area. Lyra stepped toward Kellen. We did it, she said softly. It's safe for now. For the first time in years, he allowed himself a small measure of relief. Let's get out of here, he said, before they regroup. They guided the settlers to a hidden exit, taking the device with them. It was heavy, but Lyra had prepared it for transport. They moved quickly, avoiding the main paths and using narrow tunnels and cliffside routes only they knew. As they reached the canyon rim, the first rays of morning sun touched the horizon. The desert below was still harsh, but it looked different now, less empty, less hopeless. Kellen realized that if this device worked as Lyra intended, the world could be changed. He looked at her, the woman who had once asked him to make it quick, and now stood beside him, not as a victim, but as a partner in something larger than both of them. You could leave, Lyra said quietly. After all this, you could ride away and never look back. Kellen shook his head. Not this time. I spent too long running, I think. Maybe it's time I stand for something.
Lyra smiled, faint but genuine.
Then stay. Help me protect this. Help us rebuild. For a moment, Kellen imagined a life beyond constant contracts and dusty trails, a life where he didn't have to survive alone. The canyon below, bathed in early sunlight, seemed to promise new beginnings. They moved down the cliffside toward the settlement, where the device could be safely protected and used responsibly. The settlers followed, carrying supplies and securing the area. As they walked, Kellen glanced at Lyra. Her eyes were no longer filled with fear or exhaustion. They held quiet hope, the kind that comes from surviving against impossible odds. "You know," Kellen said, breaking the silence, "when you asked me to make it quick, I thought you wanted it over fast. Now I think you were testing me." Lyra chuckled softly. "Maybe I was. I needed to see if anyone would actually stop and see me. And you did." He allowed himself a small smile. "Then I guess we both survived the test." The alien device pulsed gently at the edge of the settlement, its light reflecting on their faces. It was more than technology. It was a symbol of possibility, of change, of hope in a world that had long forgotten it. Kellen looked out over the desert at the horizon where the sun was climbing higher, turning the sand gold. For the first time in years, he felt like he was exactly where he needed to be. Lyra's voice brought him back from his thoughts. "It's going to take time to rebuild," she said. "The planet, the settlements, everything. But now we have a chance." Kellen nodded. "Then we'll take it. Step by step. Together." The canyon echoed with the sounds of movement. Settlers preparing, creatures stirring in the sand, wind whispering through the rocks. Kellen and Lyra stood side by side, looking toward the future. For the first time in a long while, the desert did not feel like an endless challenge. It felt alive, full of possibilities. And as they walked toward the settlement, Kellen knew that the story was far from over. But this time he would not ride alone. Lyra glanced at him. "You know, I thought no one would come." "I did," Kellen said simply. "And I'll keep coming, as long as it matters." She smiled, and for the first time, Kellen felt the weight of the past begin to lift. The canyon, the desert, the twin suns, they were no longer just obstacles. They were a place where something new could grow. And, for the first time in years, Kellen Rourke allowed himself to believe in tomorrow.